Good evening. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Brisbane Planning Commission of Thursday, September 27th, 2018. Could we have a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Gomez.
Here.
Commissioner Gooding.
Here.
Commissioner Mackin.
Here.
Commissioner Patel.
Here.
Commissioner Sayasan.
Here. Thank you very much. All the commissioners are here. Could we have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, I hear 2 seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, we move on to the consent calendar. We have 2 items on the consent calendar, the draft action minutes, 2 past meetings. Is there anyone who'd like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Seeing none. Then I'd like a motion, please, to approve the consent calendar as it appears. A second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Motion carries. Consent calendar is approved. We move to oral communications. Is there anyone that would like to address the commission on any item that does not appear on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Written communications. We have an item here from the Housing Leadership Council. This is regarding the 18th Annual Housing Leadership Day of Friday, October 19th, 2018. And we also have correspondence from our city attorney advising commissioners not to take official positions on the matter of Housing Leadership Council. Moving on, we have new business. The first item on our agenda this evening is 101 South Hill Drive in Crocker Park. This is use permit UP-5-18. Could we have a staff report, please?
All right, thank you. Good evening, Commission. So the application before you tonight is for a use permit for a cannabis business at 101 South Hill Drive. The business is Kaliva, so they're proposing a retail delivery, warehousing, distribution, and light manufacturing uses at this currently vacant, about 18,000 square foot office and warehouse building in Crocker Park. Of course, in Crocker Park in the TC1 district, any cannabis-related business requires a use permit approval. So that is why you're looking at it tonight. So just some orientation to the area. So we're up here on South Hill Drive, which extends above Valley Drive below in the Crocker Park Recreational Trail. So subject property here is shown in yellow outline. On the same property behind it at 111 South Hill, there's also another vacant building, which, as was noted in the staff report, we have some interest there with another cannabis business that may require another use permit hearing before you guys. So in the immediate area, we have primarily other distribution uses, as well as some manufacturing and office uses. And here's an applicant site plan. They're not proposing any changes to the site. You can see the primary driveway taking access from South Hill Drive. Existing parking is on the site. The parking that's provided is in excess of the minimum required. So they, through their lease agreement, have 49 spaces that they're allowed to use on the property. It's shared with another building that's leased separately. And based on the square footages and the uses occurring in the building, that exceeds the minimum requirement of 32 spaces by quite a lot. So a unique property out there in Crocker with parking. They also have an existing loading dock that they would propose to use for deliveries and distribution. That's on the west side, so the rear of that building. And it's noted on the site plan here, they're proposing some security measures to that loading area, just to make sure that when trucks are loading and offloading, that access is very controlled. And that's something they worked with our police department on to design. So just another brief refresher on how we regulate cannabis businesses. So, as you guys know, we've already approved one use permit here in town. Our first use permit was for retail delivery, light manufacturing, and office use. So this is our second use permit request. The applicant would be obtaining 3 licenses from the state of California. So the manufacturing license would be from Department of Health, Public Health, and then the Bureau of Cannabis Control would issue the retail delivery and distribution licenses. And as a reminder, the state will not issue any licenses without getting confirmation from the local jurisdiction first that it's a permitted use. And again, our council last fall, after review by the commission, adopted Ordinance 617 to allow certain types of cannabis businesses here in Brisbane, the largest suite of uses being only allowed as a conditional use in the Crocker Park District. So the regulations for cannabis businesses are contained in Chapter 17.33, and they essentially apply a series of performance standards to these businesses that are really geared towards, the kind of special characteristics of a business like this, and council wanted to just make sure that in any use permit process that we're also making sure the basic performance standards are also being complied with. So these relate to security provisions, operating plans, and that sort of thing. The applicant did submit a very detailed business operations plan along with their application that responds to all of these performance standards and also gives a lot more detail as to the actual operations day-to-day on the site. So in terms of our use permit review, and again, just to give a little more background, the applicant's going to give their own presentation and tell you much more about the company. But so this business, Caliva, they're already established in San Jose. They're a vertically integrated business there, just meaning that they touch like every phase of the operation from growing to processing. They're not going to be doing everything here in Brisbane, obviously. They're only focusing on those 3 uses, but they are an established business that's been operating for over 3 years. So diving back into our use permit review, as you know, our findings really relate to compatibility with surrounding uses, consistency with our general plan, and then making sure that it's not negatively impacting public health and safety. So fairly similar in probably is going to be a consistent theme in your use permit review for these businesses. The proposed uses are consistent with the adjacent uses in Crocker Park. We have a very diverse business space there in Crocker. This particular block, there's almost every single allowed use in Crocker actually is currently operating. So when it comes to consistency with adjacent uses, they've achieved that there. The other safety item, as I said, police did talk with the applicant in depth before they even submitted, and I understand they have an agreement with police as to what security improvements will be required prior to occupancy. They've shown some details on like the site plan, for example. Of course, not every detail will be spelled out at the use permit level. We'll leave that to their negotiations with police. When it comes to general plan consistency, again, our trade commercial land use category allows a mix of commercial uses. So that includes light industrial, warehouse, retail. All of these are consistent with what the applicant's proposing. When it comes to other public health and safety, so the applicant is proposing some manufacturing uses. So there, as briefly described in the staff report, there will be some use of solvents that are regulated under existing fire code and building codes. The class of solvents is similar to like at a auto shop, like lacquers, varnishes, that sort of thing. So as conditions of approval, of course, they would have to demonstrate that all of their processes, all of their machinery and equipment are complying with whatever standards are imposed by fire, building code, air quality management district, any other regulating body. So with those conditions of approval, they'd be complying with that condition as well. So I'll just sum it up now and let the applicant tell you some more about themselves. So we are recommending conditional approval of the project, subject to the findings and conditions of approval contained in the resolution. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Julia. Questions from the commissioners for staff? Commissioner Syson?
I think I'll have questions for the applicant, but not now.
Okay. Commissioner Gooding?
Yeah, likewise for the applicant.
Commissioner Gomez?
None at this time.
Commissioner Patel? Okay, I have one. Sorry. The adjacent building at 111 South Hill Drive, do we know, is that unoccupied at this time?
Yes.
And
So this site used to be occupied by ATP for a very long time. And we've had preliminary conversations with another cannabis business that's looking to lease that property or has already leased.
Okay.
So you would be seeing a use permit request.
Okay. I was just concerned because of the close proximity if there was a tenant at this point. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point in time, we will open the public hearing. I assume that the applicant is here. If you would like to step forward to the podium and also identify who you are, who you represent, give us an idea who you are, please.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Commissioners. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this evening. My name is Larry Thacker. I'm the Chief Compliance Officer for Caliva. We are excited to present our proposal to you today. For manufacturing, distribution, and retail delivery. A little bit about my background. Prior to joining the cannabis industry, I was in regulated healthcare operations for 30 years. Licensed by the Department of Public Health, licensed by the the DEA, Board of Pharmacy, and Department of Health Services at the state and the federal level. And a little bit about who we are. Okay, we are a different type of cannabis company. Our backgrounds are very much out of professional other industries, and we came together in cannabis over the last 3 years. So Caliva is the largest vertically integrated cannabis company in California today. We opened our San Jose flagship store in July of 2015. We were voted #1 cannabis dispensary in the nation by Business Insider in September of 2016. We hired our 150th employee last December. Number 322 joined today. And currently, our brands are we currently have 7 of the top 10 spots in the state of California in virtually every category for cannabis products. And our approach is different. So we aim to be a good neighbor with all of the communities that we reside in. And we want to be a safe and reliable partner to the community in the city of Brisbane. We, again, we're aiming to create manufacturing distribution facility to serve the legal cannabis needs and the business opportunities in Northern California, and to establish a best-in-class delivery operation to serve the cannabis consumer from Brisbane and the surrounding communities. Over the past 4 weeks, we've met with the police department and we've met with the fire department concerning our project, and we believe we've addressed all of the concerns that they had had. We take security as one of, outside of compliance and security is kind of first and foremost for us. We have interior and exterior live video surveillance of the building 24 hours a day. We have licensed guards on site 24 hours a day. We have fully functional central monitoring of all of our alarm systems, and at each of our operations we have redundant security command centers. So Brisbane will monitor every other facility, and every other facility will monitor Brisbane. That allows us to have redundant monitoring. Every one of our facilities have licensed security staff 24 hours per day. The procedures are very important as well. For delivery, we verify that all of our customers meet all of the age and medical requirements for the state of California. We have limitations on the amount of cash or product that any driver may have and any patient may receive. We accept credit cards for our transactions, making it even safer. We have discrete delivery vehicles, everything under camera and GPS, as well as security in the vehicles. And one of the things that we worked with the City of Brisbane Police Department was to put in both truck traps and man traps at all locations. So it will take 2 steps to gain entry into any of our facilities. From a distribution perspective, all of our vehicles that would do business-to-business deliveries, all are again, we were mentioning the truck trap, but the same security is in all of our distribution vehicles. Cameras, security cages, drop safes if they're to acquire any cash. And what we've done is everything is through tracked and trace. So we know every bit of cannabis that is on any one of our vehicles, where it's going, and we monitor that vehicle during its trip. So every one of our business deliveries actually go with trackers in them. And we can actually see if it gets out of a geo fence that we set up for it, and can provide very good real-time tracking for all deliveries. Please.
Commissioners, Rand Martin. I'm Vice President of Governmental Affairs for Caliva. One of the things I wanted to clarify is something that Julia indicated to you relative to the roll-up door that we have. That actually does not currently exist. That will be added to the facility after our conversations with Commander Meisner. He insisted that we have something where you could actually roll up and pull the truck up close with the exterior truck trap chain link all the way around that you have to drive into. It's slammed shut. Nobody else can come in behind you. You unload then, and then the truck leaves after the roll-up door is closed. So I just want to make sure it's not a roll-up door that exists currently. It's one that we'll be installing.
And that is all indicated on the plan. Our manufacturing facility. So we plan on creating an 800 square foot GMP manufacturing facility. And we're currently working with a design group called DGA, which is designing the space and looking at the best use of the facility and kind of where we would locate things. Manufacturing will be something that we will come back with a second building permit later on, as we address the concerns that were identified and that we've addressed with both the police department and the fire department. But our main focus on the manufacturing will be to produce crude and purified cannabis extracts. We would refine that oil kind of in-house, and then we would turn it into wellness-type products, tinctures, creams, lotions, soft gel caplets, potentially some types of edible products. So those are all potential futures or all potential products that we may be able to do at the facility. An important part of the manufacturing practices, though, is everything around containment, health and safety, disease control, cleanliness, sanitation. We have our own in-house lab. So we have PhDs on site that test every part of the process all the way through the manufacturing, so that every step we are ensuring that we're within GMP and meeting the state of California requirements for cannabis manufacturing. All of our work is done in-house. Because we're vertical, we actually grow the cannabis at one of our other facilities. It can be extracted. That oil can then be formulated by our chemistry team and turned in the appropriate product that it needs to be made into. Sorry. Something else that's important is just controlling the waste. And we'll be working with the City of Brisbane's approved hauler that we have. We've already started working with them. And they will both be working with standard office and normal waste, and with our green waste programs that we have. All of our waste is controlled and then certified that it's been destroyed. If it's green waste, it goes to a certified composter, and we receive the certificates of destruction back. If it's some type of manufacturing waste, the same thing applies. And it seems that the city contractor is able to do all of those services and is actually anxious to start to understand more about the cannabis programs to service more of their customers. So we have some photos of the current condition. It is an empty building at this point. 18,800 square feet, actually works very perfect for the uses that we're intending here. It has enough space for us, it has enough parking, and from a manufacturing perspective, it's the right type of building for us to work in.
I just wanted to point out, it may seem like a random photo, but we kept this one of the doorway because this is actually the hallway that would be used as the man trap for the delivery drivers. They would actually come in through a secure entrance, another security inside that would be in existence so that they would be able to come through the outside door, be in the man trap until the outside door is secure, and then they could come into the facility.
In fact, thank you. That is our employee entrance up there. So that glass door will be replaced with a steel door. It'll have electronic access to it. An employee will come up, buzz, hit the buzzer. Right on the other side of the door, it will be about a 6 to 8 foot man trap. When they are buzzed into that, they present their ID to the security guard at the security window. Security guard will verify it and then will electronically allow them to enter into the facility. We have a floor plan of, that got stretched out. We have a floor plan there, and the purple shaded area is the current area that we're talking about today. You have the distribution, which would be on my upper left there, and the retail operations on the upper right. The 3 smaller rooms are our manufacturing spaces. I'm sorry, that's kind of hard to see. Not sure for you guys, but and I don't know if there's any particular questions in regards to the floor plan, but we'll go ahead and
No, go ahead.
yeah, continue on. You want to bring up? Thank you. Here is the site plan again.
This one got stretched too.
They all did. We have elevations, and on the elevations, we've identified kind of the caging of the truck traps. You could just kind of see the size of the truck trap that'll be going in.
The second one from the left is actually, from the side, shows the truck trap off the back of the building. The far right one shows it, but it's not three-dimensional, but it gives you an idea of how big and where it's going to be located.
And
Oh, I'm sorry.
it's okay. And we look forward to joining the community here in Brisbane. And I welcome any questions that I can do to answer on our project.
Okay, please, if you would stay at that podium, I think we'll have some questions for you. Commissioner Saison, you want to start?
Yeah, regarding odor maintenance, so you've had a facility operating in San Jose for 3 years, you say, so will you be using the same type of equipment here at this facility?
Yes.
So, have you ever had any issues with odors at the San Jose facility, any complaints or anything like that?
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Okay,
In roughly February or March of 2016, we had a complaint about the smell of cannabis odor. That is at one of our cultivation facilities. It so happens there's another grow facility across the street. The code enforcement came out. We worked with code enforcement. We did not believe that it was our facility, but what we did is we took all of our HEPA filtration and our carbon filtration systems, and we ran them to a stack on the roof like you would treat chemotherapy fumes in a specialty pharmacy. That's my background. Mm-hmm. And we ran it up 30 feet off the roof. So now, even though we didn't feel that that was our odor, We went ahead and created a central pipe and put it out high enough to where the odors can't drift down to the ground if it was us. We would be instituting those same types of practices here. First off, this facility will not have fresh cannabis. It would have processed cannabis that is already packaged. There could be some byproduct material that is used in extraction, but again, the smell associated with that is much less. Throughout the building, there will be carbon filters that will be put in. All of the air will be scrubbed and then vented out. If we need to, we would do the same thing of putting a stack up if that was something that would be required. But because it's not a grow facility, probably is not necessary. But we take it very serious.
Okay. And I think there was one other issue regarding, you said that sometimes you do cash transactions?
Yes, ma'am.
So that includes when you deliver the cannabis to your customers, you mean you also accept cash payment upon delivery?
Yes. So you could have a delivery to a retail customer, and they may pay $50 in cash. That is put into a secured bag inside of the driver's vehicle. And if it was and depending upon what type of transaction, that would then be put into a safe.
So the driver, because I think somewhere in here you say that the driver would not hold a certain, like a maximum amount of cash with him. So if he were to make multiple trips and pick up additional cash, like at what point would he then go back and drop off the
There is a limit that they are required internally. We do that for security, and they will be routed back to our facility.
Okay.
It is no more than $1,000 that a driver will ever have on them at any one time at the maximum amount possible.
Okay, I think those are my questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Gomez?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. The one question I did have, and I may have misread, was you got a pretty aggressive growth forecast at like 150 new employees for this site. Is that?
Yes.
And the parking is like
49.
49. So is that an issue potentially, or not?
No, and because we have delivery operations,
Okay.
we will be hiring a lot of, drivers. Most of the time, the drivers can't work for you full time.
Got it.
So, we might have 3 separate shifts of drivers that are starting at different points. Excuse me.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. I was
In fact,
pointing out the
first-
obvious, but it was.
The first job fair is currently reserved somewhere here close by for October 20th, and the second one is October 27th, where we're already starting to hopefully be able to go out there and start doing job fairs here in the city.
Okay. Cool.
If I could ask you, just try to speak into that microphone, because we do have some people that watch at home, and they may have a little trouble if you go that direction. Thank you.
Thank you. I will.
Commissioner Gooding?
Yes, thank you. Somewhere in the materials, I note that the limit a driver has or can carry is $10,000 worth of product. Did I get that right?
In the state of California, the limit is a maximum of $10,000.
So is it conceivable that a driver would be coming back from a run with $10,000 in cash from
No.
that product?
Again, our limit is $1,000, that if a driver ever has $1,000, they would come back. We have never had that situation occur. Right now, the drivers typically will go out on 3 to 4 deliveries. The average delivery is $75, just over $75 for delivery.
So what do you anticipate as to how do I phrase this correctly? How many trucks a day or a shift would be exiting and coming back to the facility on a typical day?
Well, in terms of trucks per day, there may be 1 or 2 smaller deliveries from vendors per day on the retail delivery side. On the distribution side, we anticipate 1 to 2 trucks leaving per day out on their delivery routes throughout Northern California. In terms of drivers coming in and then leaving again, that could happen 30 to 40 times in a day at the facility.
And what trucks or what do these vehicles look like?
They're NV200s or NV2000, the Nissan little trucks that are out there.
Little box?
Yeah, I'm blanking on whether it's a 200 or a 2000.
So I have a concern to voice, and it's just going to be sort of a generalized concern. Maybe you can address it however you wish. You guys are roughly upwind from Lippman Middle School, which is a little bit higher above the level of South Hill Street. But every afternoon and every morning, the kids come down this little ramp down to South Hill and take a shuttle bus where they get dropped off and then picked up by a shuttle bus to arrive at and leave school. So one of my concerns is the extent of sort of your presence, your visible presence, either by odor or by the obviousness of the trucks.
Right.
So address either one of those as you can, please.
Thank you. So the trucks, every vehicle is nondescript. You are not allowed to advertise on the side of a vehicle. So none of the vehicles have Caliva on them or indicate what they're carrying. The entrance to the facility for all deliveries is not visible from the street. You go in, you turn left, and then you back into the building. So the nature of the operations would not be visible to anybody walking by or anybody driving by on the street. In terms of the odor, I do not believe that there will be any visible odor from the facility, or any noticeable odor.
I think I heard you say that you plan, or you're looking forward to expanding your facility to include more than is in the current use permit. Can you explain what that was?
The current use permit is for all three of the activities that we envision doing here. We will be coming back with a new building permit request once the manufacturing engineering is done. That is what we will come back to the city for.
And would that change likely result in any change or increase in the odors emanating from the building?
The intent here is not to have any unprocessed cannabis. That is all done at other facilities.
Yeah, and Commissioner, I don't know whether you have a copy of the application.
I do.
The narrative there. I wish I could tell you what page, but there is a page that has a photograph of the odor control unit that we use currently and would be using here, give you a better idea of what we intend to do.
Page 18. G.1.38.
So on a typical day, how many vans or trucks will be coming and going? With 30-ish?
In terms of trucks, probably one or two coming in and one or two coming out in terms of these NV200s. Deliveries are done in smaller, normal personal vehicles. So the model of cannabis delivery is similar to an Uber, something like that. And to tell you a little bit about our employment practices, our average wage of our hourly employees is $17.50 an hour. The minimum starting wage at the company is $15, and again, it's running right now at just over $17 for starting and averaging at $17.50. Every employee at Caliva is a shareholder of the company. We offer full health care benefits, and 100% of Caliva employees can receive full scholarships to every community and city college in the state of California. So if they have a desire to go to a community college, we will pay for it 100% for them. And that's something we do for all of our employees.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Patel?
Do you foresee, your business running 24 hours a day, or are the hours that are listed right here the hours that are going to remain?
That is the hours that are, listed right now. We currently have a limit of operating hours here in the city, and we would be honoring and abiding by all of those operating hours. We will have staff in the building 24 hours a day. For instance, security staff. There will be people in the building, but operations are only during City of Brisbane hours.
The reason I'm asking is because assume that the hours change. Let's say that you are able to operate 24 hours. Maybe some of these traffic concerns would become, the questions around traffic and cars and trucks going in and out might be different. So if you were able to operate 24 hours a day, is that what you would do?
No.
Oh.
We would not operate 24 hours a day. We don't at any of our facilities now. Our longest retail operation stops at 10 o'clock. If it was a growing facility, that starts very early in the morning. We grow from midnight till 12 in the afternoon to reduce energy consumption on the grid, but here it would not.
Do individual cars come in and out of the complex in terms of individual deliveries? You indicated it's an Uber model, so are there individual cars coming in and out?
Our employees that are drivers do use their vehicles. So they would pull in their vehicle and then leave and be gone out on their deliveries, come back and check in, and then would go off shift.
So when you were saying that you expected, how many deliveries by individual cars would you envision in a day?
No more than 30 to 40 employee trips in or out. So I would have to, I'm sorry I didn't break down the actual number of deliveries, but our maximum number of employees on right now would be 40. So I would have to calculate that better for you.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Okay. I just have two questions. One regarding trucks. Since I can't remember, if you could again clarify what you described you worked out with the Brisbane Commander Meisner Police Department. The truck containment unit for loading and unloading. What did you call that?
So what we call a truck trap.
Right.
So a truck trap is a security fenced cage
Right.
that the truck backs into. The doors get locked. The driver then can get out of the vehicle, and he's completely protected. The truck door and this is for distribution. This is for shipments in
Right.
and
Understood.
shipments out, right?
Understood.
And then the bay door would be opened up. But at no point is a door open to the interior of the building that somebody can just walk up and get into.
Right.
So that was the concern.
Okay. So
Correct me if I'm wrong, there's also slats that go through the
Yes.
chain link to make sure that you can't see into
okay.
the
So
truck trap.
understanding that, assuming you have several trucks a day that make these deliveries out to your distributors, other distributors, or people who repackage and make other products. When a truck is fully loaded and it exits this trap, do they ever sit in the parking lot fully loaded? Or do you have any guidelines on that? Because my concern is the trap's only as effective as one truck, it's loaded, and it leaves immediately. Versus if someone says, well, now it's loaded, but I need to go back in the office. And I just get into the same, obviously you have security concerns. Granted, I'm sure you do. But I'm kind of segueing off what Commissioner Gooding said, is that if people, which they will, get wind of, and I don't mean that as a pun, get wind of what you're doing there. Vehicles that are fully loaded with product are fair game And we want to make sure, if you do business in Brisbane, that it's healthy and wealthy for everyone and safe more than anything. So do you have policies on those trucks? They're not sitting in the parking lot? They don't, or someone with a delivery vehicle that's doing the customer routes, deliveries, that if they come back and they have cash and they've got a lot of products sitting in the car, that it's not just sitting out there loaded. Just, and this may reassure other people listening to this broadcast. I'm trying to ask questions that they might want to ask.
No, I can appreciate that, and thank you. So let me break that up a little bit. Let's first talk about the distribution deliveries or business-to-business transactions. We rank them based on the value of the truck going out the door. We have 3 levels. Each one of those levels have escalating security parameters around them. Depending upon the situation, we would even have an unmarked security vehicle, which we do random anyway, follow our business to business. But based on the value of the transaction, it may be escorted. Certainly anything that's beyond, well, the police department will get the security plan of what that level is. Depending upon what level, a security guard will also leave the building, go outside and what we call post up near the entrance to the property. So we do this in San Jose because there's one entrance into our backyard or a back truck lot. A guard will go out to the entrance when we're doing large enough shipments and be out front in communication with the guard inside. In the daytime, during operating hours, we'll have a minimum of 2 guards, one that can go outside and one that can come inside. So we do have security protocols based on the value of the transaction. For the regular retail deliveries, when the drivers come back, they're not allowed to leave it in their vehicle. They actually come back into the building, and it's in a case, and they bring it back in. Those cases are then audited. They're reconciled every day. The driver audits it going out. We audit it going out, and or coming back, and we balance all of the cash that was supposed to be returned to us.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I have one other question. This is based on looking at your blueprints. On the attachment B, but this is the sheet, let me see how I can tell you what it is. C1.1.
Yep.
And it notes relocate the ADA parking. And it looks like it's at an entrance, so I was mystified by that. Why are you relocating ADA parking that's at an entrance?
Because the current ADA parking is where the truck trap is going
Okay,
to be.
okay,
So it just
got
has to be moved.
Okay, and on that same blueprint map where it says secure entrance, is that the main entrance? Is that what you refer to as the main entrance?
So we have 2 entrances, correct. One is for just the employee entrance coming in, and one is for the delivery entrance. They are both secure entries.
Okay, I understand. So now going to another sheet is designated as A1.1. We'll come into, now I understand, because this other one shows where you have windows that are being converted to a roll-up door. In the little corner, we see which would be the secure entrance. On this blueprint are 2 doors, what looks like 2 doors, unless that's not accurate. You follow what I'm saying? Are
Yes.
both of those doors being retained, and why would you have 2 doors? Just in the corner.
In the corner, I believe.
No, this is the delivery man trap and employee entrance.
Right, but no.
There's one right here as well, according to.
Could you point out to make sure I'm looking at the right one?
Here, it's right there.
Right there. Okay.
Those will not be used as entries in the building.
Okay,
They will be replaced. All of the glass doors will get replaced with steel doors.
okay,
We're not closing up that entrance.
right.
But it won't be used.
So you're just going to secure those entrances? They will
Correct.
be maybe an emergency exit,
Correct.
but they're
And
not going to be used as an entry point.
Everyone that does not have to be used
Right,
for an emergency exit will be closed up.
okay. All right, that clarifies that. Any further questions from the commissioners? Do you think of anything else? No? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, very
Great.
much.
Thank you.
Nice comprehensive presentation. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on this topic? I see none. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay. Commissioners, discussion. Commissioner Gomez, you want to start?
I was just concerned about the parking situation. That kind of stuck out. I think we've addressed concerns around delivery and security and safety. Appreciate the presentation. Seems to me like the plan is pretty thorough. The one kind of in the back of my mind is that this is the second one that's come before us this year. I don't know what is currently where the current state of affairs are with that other business, and we had discussions around safety and security and volume of deliveries as well, but I don't think we can really understand the impacts thus far. I don't think they're operational yet.
Yeah, I don't believe so either.
Yeah.
Okay. Staff, you want to address that? Cannabis was the other, I believe. Are they actually operational?
Yeah.
I didn't think so. Right.
Yeah, they, at the time that you all saw them, they were still working on, I believe, getting funded. They were startup. They are a startup.
Okay.
So, yeah,
Thank
they're
you
not
for that
operating yet.
clarification. Okay, Commissioner Patel?
No, I have no questions.
Okay.
No
Commissioner
comments.
Syza?
No, I don't.
Commissioner Gooding?
No further comment.
Okay, I have no comments. I think the presentation was very comprehensive. I think you've demonstrated to us that you've looked at all aspects of this. Obviously, you're not new in the business, which is, I would assume, reassuring to some people that you've gone around the block several times on this. So bringing your business to Brisbane would be an expansion of something you're already doing. If we have no other discussion necessary, I would entertain a motion to approve this use permit. It's UP-5-18.
Well, I'll make a motion. We approve use permit UP-5-18.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No one opposed? Motion carries. Gentlemen, welcome to Brisbane. Glad to have you. Thank you for coming tonight. Moving on, our next item of business, we have a public hearing. This will be on a use permit UP-4-18. This is on the Baylands, east of Bayshore. It's between Icehouse Hill and the Caltrain rail lines. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. An interim use permit is requested by the applicant on behalf of the Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Board to utilize the vacant yard between Icehouse Hill and the Caltrain tracks that's on the Baylands. The yard would be used as a staging and construction assembly area for Caltrain improvements. The larger Caltrain project includes various, and that's the location there. The larger project includes various improvements for the electrification for Caltrain system efficiency and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions of the system. The requested permit duration is for 1 year, starting on October 5th. Use of the site would be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week during that time. And that looks a little stretched out maybe too, but I'm not sure. By way of Site description, the proposed staging yard is approximately 3.5 acres and is located immediately east and largely within the former cut area of Ice House Hill, and then extending a little bit to the north of that cut area. It's within the rail line, essentially, that and the rail yard that was established in the early 1900s. Kinder Morgan Tank Farm, which you see a little sliver of on the right of that slide, is located opposite the Caltrain right-of-way to the east and southeast. There are 5 sets of rail line tracks in this area of the Caltrain right-of-way, and an existing rail spur connects with the westernmost track to provide access for the proposed project. Roadway access to the site is from a private driveway that runs behind the Brisbane Fire Station, intersects with Bayshore Boulevard to the south of the fire station. So this image in yellow essentially shows how vehicles would get into the site, right-hand turn in, and then the blue shows the right-hand turn out onto Bayshore Boulevard. The proposed staging yard is within an existing rail yard area that was previously hardened by historical rail yard activities and is surfaced with gravel. This slide and the next shows the approach driveway to the site, and then on this one you see the essentially this is the right-of-way, and they had when I did this site visit, they had a train a work train essentially that they were assembling within the right-of-way there. So this is another view of that. And then a view of the site itself with Ice House Hill behind. Although there are remnants of power poles and light standards, and you see one here, located on the site, there are currently no water or power supplies to the site. In terms of the proposed use, what it would entail, the proposed use of the yard would be to stage various rail line construction materials and equipment, as well as for assembly of work trains and train track segments to be deployed for work along the Caltrain rail corridor. This would include transport of such materials as water and cement, as well as on and off hauling of tunnel liner debris and rock ballast materials, and transport of track segments. As I mentioned, the work would be conducted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with both day and night shifts. Each shift would be comprised of up to approximately 40 workers. Between the work shifts and the delivery vehicles, there would be approximately 200 vehicle trips per day. That would be on to Bayshore. Each trip is counted 1 in and 1 out. Work activities were outlined in some detail in the Commission's agenda report. In brief, work trains would be assembled on site on the rail spur and would consist of 7 to 9 flat rail cars, like what you see here. Equipment, material, storage containers, and other items would be staged atop these cars and deployed along with the workers to the work sites along the tracks. The trains, work trains would be assembled by hoisting the equipment, material storage containers, and other items onto the flat rail cars using either a forklift or a crane. In some locations along the corridor, railroad tunnels will need to be enlarged to allow space for installation of the overhead electrical system. As a result, there would be concrete tunnel liner demolition materials, and that material would be temporarily staged on site in debris piles. Minor maintenance of equipment would also be performed on site, and the applicant would be required to follow best management practices for stormwater protection, as indicated in the conditions of approval. Worker vehicles would be parked at the north end of the yard, and other equipment, vehicles, and materials would be staged towards the south. There would be a 24,000-gallon water tank on site to supply the tanks that would go onto the cars, and that would be connected via above-ground water line, a temporary water line from Industrial Way. Dry cement would be stored in containers, and these are referred to as guppies. The cement would not be mixed on site, but would be transported to the work locations along the track line. So these are self-contained containers, so the dust does not escape out of those. Assembly of the track segments would occur on the site as 80-foot long track panels or longer individual lengths of tracks to be transported from the site for placement where needed along the railroad line. Small equipment and materials would be stored in lockable rail car storage containers, as you saw on the other slide. An office trailer with generator supplied power would also be located on site, and that would typically have up to 3 or 4 employees working there. Lighting would be provided for night operations via portable generator mounted lighting standards. The light would be required to be directed downward onto the site to minimize potential for light glare onto other properties. And the applicant has indicated that they plan to have 5 portable toilet facilities also located on site. Security would be provided with a construction fence, temporary lighting, and on-site construction work presence. The gate at the south entrance may also be locked when necessary. Regarding dust control, the city engineer is requiring a dust control and monitoring plan, and conditions of approval are included to address that. Again, the applicant has indicated that the requested use of the site is for 1-year period. That would start on October 5th, so coming up soon here if they get approval. And finally, as you all know, there are required findings for the Planning Commission to grant an interim use permit on the Baylands, and those were detailed in your agenda report. This proposal meets all of those findings, and they are outlined on this slide. Very briefly, the proposed use is on an already disturbed and hardened site from past rail yard activities, and the use would not have any significant environmental effects, nor would it be detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, nor would it be injurious to the properties or improvements in the area. It will not obstruct redevelopment given its short duration. No permanent utilities are required to be installed. The applicant has indicated that they will work with the city to comply with the condition regarding outreach to potential Brisbane resident employees. And finally, the project would serve to benefit the public in that the construction staging yard would support the Caltrain electrification improvements, which are aimed at improving the system's operational efficiencies as well as reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So in closing, staff recommends that the Planning Commission conditionally approve interim use permit UP 418 via adoption of the resolution with the findings and conditions of approval.
Thank you, Ken. I'm going to start the questions for staff.
Okay.
And I don't know if you'll have an answer on this. Typically, these are run past our police department. My initial concern looking at this was just where the site is, and the question is kind of straightforward. I'm looking at attachment C, and it indicates incoming, I would assume these are delivery vehicles that were described. And the access is to the south of our fire station. And that's pretty straightforward. It's the egress I'm concerned about. Because are these vehicles going back south again? In which case they're crossing multiple lanes of traffic. Has any stipulation or any consideration been made how those vehicles would go south?
They could not do a southbound turn onto Bayshore. There's actually a divider.
Right.
Their physical divider, so
right.
It'd be impossible to make that turn. So if they were to go south, they'd have to go north first and either do a U-turn or go all the way up to the freeway. But if they're intending to go south more immediately, they'd probably go up to Guadalupe would be the first signaled intersection, if that. I'm not sure if they can even do a U-turn there.
Right, well, this is my concern, is that very clear direction probably needs to be given, because you may not have the same drivers all the time, and that's where I wondered if anyone had thought about that, because we don't want a big flatbed semi trying to figure out how to do a U-turn on Bayshore.
Right, I don't.
Obviously.
Right, so this has gone, it went to the police department, as you
Yes.
mentioned. It also went to the city engineer, and the city engineer actually had some follow-up to clarify what the access routes were. So he's well aware of it. And with regards to whether you can do a U-turn or not, if it's not legal, they cannot do a U-turn there. But we could bring this as a item of interest, essentially, to the police department to watch for that. I know the police commander had no concerns that he raised on this application.
And just one follow-up, and this may be more appropriate for the applicant, is when you're removing demolition debris from tunnels, these are tunnels, I've ridden Caltrain, and some of those were 1911. So you've got years and years of exhaust fumes. Is that concrete now characterized as hazardous waste? Okay, if you'll hold that, hold that. We're gonna get to you, I promise. But has that come up?
That has not come up as a concern, and yeah, I know, to some degree they're going to be storing items within their rail cars. They're also going to be rinsing the materials as well before they, to minimize dust on the site. But when we open the public hearing, the applicant may want to address that further.
Absolutely. Okay, let's move on with some more questions. Commissioner Gooding?
Yes, thank you. My main concern when I was reading the application, and this may be a question more for the applicant, so just tell me that, but if you can tell me what you know, that'd be helpful, is noise generation. Given this is a explicitly 24/7, 365 operation, my concern is noise generation as it may impact the Brisbane residents on the Northeast Ridge, which I think is the closest piece of residential Brisbane to this work site. To a certain extent, part of the general site is behind or east of Ice House Hill, so I get that might provide some shielding. So my question is going to be either to staff if they know, or to the applicant when it's their turn, as to where in this site the noise is likely to be generated, what kind of noise, and what times of the day. Some of the time windows in the application were disturbingly sleep-related times for normal residential uses.
Right. Yeah, so and Julia, do you mind dimming the lights again? I think this image, or another, I'm going to step it back here. This image here shows the red or pink at the north end is where they plan to park the private vehicles, and so my understanding is that the more active areas of the site would be further south, which would have shielding from Ice House Hill.
If I may, I just drove there today, and I was able to drive, I think as far as the point of the yellow arrow, at which point there was a fence and I didn't feel free to barge, but it looked to me like everything ran north of that point. Maybe I'm wrong. So that's my concern, is as the further north you go, the more you run out of Ice House Hill as a shield or blocker.
Right, so that's
my question to either one of you folks.
So the north end would be for the parking of vehicles, which would not be a noise producing endeavor, just parking your private vehicles. So I might defer to the applicant to speak more on that.
That's fine. Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
No? Okay. Commissioner Saison.
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Patel.
No, all of my questions were noise related.
Okay. Commissioner
None as well.
Gomez. No. Okay. We will open the public hearing now. If the applicant, it's your turn. If you'd step forward, identify yourself, please.
Thank you, Chairpersons, for the opportunity to present this. Thank you, Ken. That was excellent presentation.
And your name, sir, for
My
the
name
public
is
record?
Bill Gilmartin. I'm the Vice President of Proven Management, which is contracted with the JPB to work on the OCS, or the Overhead Catenary System improvements. To address the work schedule, it's a little bit off in the presentation, as the 24-hour shifts will start on a Friday evening and complete on a Monday morning. So there are 24 shutdowns in this contract, and they start on October 6th, and they will go until I believe it's March 19th next year. So predominantly the work is taking place on weekends.
Could you explain what you mean by shutdowns? I'm not sure
So
if that's clear.
So the Caltrain cannot shut down the rail system during the week. They don't want to shut down the rail system at all, but because this is a major improvement to the Caltrain system, they had to organize 20 shutdowns. The 20 shutdowns were organized with regard to the traveling schedules and the baseball schedules and the upcoming new Warrior Stadium. So the importance of getting this particular portion of this improvement done starting this October by the spring is extremely important. So that's why when I say the shutdowns are each weekend. So they start on October 6th and they go the following weekend and the following weekend and the following weekend. That's when there are 24/7 shifts. During the week from Monday to Friday, those will be normal shifts from 7 to 4 o'clock, and they'll be mostly preparatory shifts to make sure that the work trains are ready to go onto the rail system to do the work. Starting in approximately January or late December, the actual rail work will start. And so that part of the project will have some field fabrication that goes on for the rail panels. The panels are built currently in 80-foot sections, and then they are put on rail cars and will be brought out to their designated positions where the rail is being changed out. To address the hazardous material, there has been no hazardous materials identified on this project. That all of the tunnels were lined 15 years ago with a grout, sort of like a stucco, if you will. All of the tunnels in San Francisco, however, are getting ground they're getting raised on the upper apex. Probably you would look at it as 2 o'clock and 11 o'clock. It has to get notched into the existing tunnels to provide space for the new rail cars. And that is the debris that will come out. If we will have the material tested prior to it coming out. If it is hazardous, it has to be dealt completely differently. At this point, there is no determination that there is any hazardous material. There could be contaminated material, which is dealt with much differently than hazardous material.
Any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Gomez.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the manufacturing of the new rail pieces, those you said 80 foot segments, that's not happening here. That's or is it?
Well, it is. So we assemble the rails onto the railroad ties,
Got it.
and then we put them on.
Okay.
the railroad or the deck trains.
Got it,
We
got
can
it.
bring them out.
So this is going to be the the major hub, if you will, of organizing and getting things set up to really accelerate this upgrade. Are there other staging areas along the corridor?
So there are other staging areas. This is a major one.
Okay,
There are staging areas in Burlingame. There are staging areas currently in South San Francisco.
got it.
And it will move further south, but this
Okay.
is a major staging area
Okay.
for the program.
Okay, just for clarification, I was very curious about that for clarification. Yeah, that's all that I have at this point.
Okay. Commissioner Saison? Okay. Commissioner Gooding?
Thank you. So back to noise. What's generating noise? What kinds of noise is being generated?
Well, the truck traffic, similar to a semi-end dump, they will be coming and going. The traffic routing is a very good question, and we will utilize temporary signage to direct drivers to the route that they have to use. And if our route currently isn't what is desired, we'll change the route. It is tricky to go. You can't go south coming out of the site, so we have to go north. There's a crane, a smaller crane. It doesn't make a lot of noise. Certainly, it would be operated only to load the rail cars of equipment. So certain equipment will come onto rail cars and go off of rail cars. The transportation, or the transport, I should say, of the cement into the containers onto the rail car is done by vacuum. It would have noise. That noise, I don't know what the decibels are. I'm going to guess it's below 90 decibels, but I'm not certain of that. That would be done during the week and during the day. It wouldn't be done at night. There would the shift changes could be accommodating to make sure that we don't impact people's sleeping patterns. I don't believe they're going to hear this project, but it is possible.
So here's my issue. I totally get why you're doing shutdowns on weekends to not mess up commuter schedules and so forth for the riders of Caltrain.
Mm-hmm.
Our job here is to protect the residents of Brisbane to the extent that your project impacts them. And if you're packing the work and the noise into weekends, that's a substantial concern to at least me. So what times of the day on weekends are you going to be generating noise?
At shift change.
Which is?
So currently we have a shift starting from 7 to 7, and then from 7 to 7. So they're 12-hour shifts.
I saw something in the materials about the bulk or the biggest noise being generated in some sort of tighter windows at either the beginning or the ends of shifts. I didn't quite understand how.
Well, that's when the shifts are changing, when new people are coming to go onto the rails. So it's not that.
So that's just their view.
We're not building anything. We're shifting men into the project and out of the project.
So what's the? Let me just ask you in layman's terms. What's the big noise being generated here? Is it the semis? Is it the crane? Is it building tracks on ties? What is it?
It's going to be the truck traffic coming and going during the week if there's material deliveries, which there will be. That would be the largest. The other noise that could be generated is when we're moving the trains in and out. So it's a lot less noise than the current trains, but there will be some noise when we move the rail cars in and out.
And is the bulk of the semi traffic in and out during weekdays as opposed to weekends?
Yes.
And the trains moving in and out will be various times, all kinds of shifts?
On the weekends when the shutdowns are occurring.
Okay. So describe for me what movement's going on weekends that generates noise, please.
Could you put up the slide of the work train? That's the work. That's the beginnings of the work train right there. So that work train will have various components on it for the operation going on on the rail system. That's the transporter right there. It's a lot. It doesn't sound like a rail locomotive, but it has noise. It's probably sounds like a loader, a normal track loader or loader would sound in a yard. So that existing rail spur has been there, and this is what makes this site ideal because we can store a work train. There's 5 rails. I think there's 5 spurs, 5 rails. There's MT1, MT2, and there is a rail spur that's currently used. There is currently work trains stored there for the other portions of the OCS project. So this was a spur that I believe used to go up to the Cow Palace for the circus. And so that's why this was ideal, because we can have the southern portion of the project going and the northern project going, because one goes this way, one goes the other way, but we're in the similar location. Currently there is a yard there right now that is on the Caltrain property. It's not occupied by us, it's occupied by Balfour Beatty.
And
It's a little bit south of this site, about maybe 500 yards.
And, this whole work area extends pretty narrow and long along the right of way, obviously.
Yeah.
Can you be at all specific as to where the noisy part's going to be? Is it behind Ice House Hill, or is it north
behind Ice House Hill?
Because the entire chunk that you're asking for a permit for extends, I think, north of any shielding that Ice House Hill can provide. What's going on there?
Parking cars, and there will be times when we're storing ballast and construction debris to be hauled out during the week. So when the ballast and construction debris comes off, we would store it in that area and load it into trucks during the week to remove it from the site.
And the semis are during the week?
On semis, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm just going to interject there. The vehicle that you showed that was moving equipment, it's not a conventional train engine, right? That's it.
Right.
To address noise, and maybe this will be helpful, I hope. There has been track replacement done in the past, 15 years in Brisbane? Is that the type of vehicle that was used to move material?
Most likely.
I don't know if you
Well,
worked here.
depends on what portion. When you're doing track replacement, you're utilizing different pieces of equipment.
Okay.
So there's what it's called. This is sort of like a modified swing stage. When you do the tamping, that's a different machine, and that makes us more noise. There's no tamping that's going on in this area at all.
Okay. Because a lot of that work, I believe, was done at night, as I recall. And that looks like the vehicle. And then on the noise issue, I'm just going to ask you then, because you brought it up. I'm reading here that it says that demolition materials and the ballast would be transported to and from the site onto rail cars or loaded to trucks. What determines which one you do? Why
So-
or? Well, I mean, when do you decide?
We are working with a quarry to get Union Pacific to deliver the railroad ballast from the valley on the rail here. That works out well, then that reduces our truck traffic considerably. Getting the right of way from Union Pacific is not an easy task because of the current schedules they're already running, and the fact that we're going to be shutting down the delivery on weekends for Union Pacific. So we're working hard to get that done. That's why it's an either or.
Okay, and then hauling material off. Again, if that was done by rail, when would that take place?
So, the material will come to this site and be loaded off the railroad, off the rail cars into trucks. The debris will.
Okay. So that will be removed from the site in trucks,
Yes.
and that's a weekday process?
The export will be on a weekday process, yes. During the week, when we're doing the demolition, it will come in and be loaded off
Yes.
and temporarily stored.
So during the week, it's constantly also being removed from the storage site?
Correct.
Okay, and that's all by truck?
That's all by truck.
But that's not done on the weekend?
That's not done on the weekend, no.
Okay, so that gives us an idea of what noise is happening when. Appreciate that. Commissioner Patel?
Certainly. So you mentioned 3 different time frames, so I'm just going to go through each of ones I wrote down. You said during the week, Monday through Friday, it'd be 7 to 4. Is that 7 p.m. to 4 a.m.?
No, that's 7 a.m. to 4
Okay.
p.m.
Just wanted to make sure I understood that. And so noise generated during that time, I think we can all agree, isn't really of concern. What type of noise during the week would be before 7 a.m. and maybe after 7 p.m.?
Just cars, personnel moving in and out.
Okay. You've seen the application, so the
Yes.
time frames that are written down on period 2, those are not accurate then?
They're not accurate in that I probably didn't describe it exactly as so to Ken. The 24-hour work shift starts on Friday evenings at 7 p.m. and will go until Monday morning at 4 a.m.
Okay. So I'm going to get to that. So the first one was a Monday to Friday. That's during the day, and there's not going to be that much noise generated there's not going to be really any noise generated Monday through Friday, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. Perfect. Then the second time frame that you indicated that I heard, and I may have misheard, it was the weekends. That's 24/7, but that's like 16, or there were limited weekends that were at play, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
There were limited weekends where 24-hour work was going to be done because of baseball.
Yeah, so it starts on October 5th,
Okay.
I believe, 5th or 6th. I don't have it. It's 5th. October 5th is the Friday.
Okay.
Starts on October 5th. That's the first weekend shutdown. There's 24 consecutive weekends that the project goes.
Okay. So from October 5th, it's 24 consecutive weekends.
Correct.
And during that time frame, what noise will be generated between the hours of after 7 p.m. till 9 o'clock in the morning?
From 7 p.m. to 9 o'clock in the morning.
Correct.
So on Friday evenings, all the work trains will already be set up from during the week. The crews will show up and they will get on the work trains and go out to the work site, which is currently the start is at the call it the southern portion of San Francisco, the tunnel that right off of Tunnel Avenue. Mm-hmm. So that's where the work is. That's the first tunnel, and there's 4 tunnels in San Francisco for this project. They go this particular tunnel, and the ending is adjacent to where the new Warrior Stadium is. Mm-hmm. So this is considered, the one on Tunnel Avenue is Tunnel 1, and the one on the other end is Tunnel 4. Tunnel 3 and Tunnel 2. Tunnel 2 is a small tunnel. There's no grinding work going on that. Tunnel 3 is, I forget, I understand it on the rail, but I don't know it on the streets. But that's where the majority of the noisy work will happen. It's you won't hear any of that in Brisbane.
Okay. So what noise would be generated in Brisbane between 7 p.m. on the weekends and 9 o'clock in the morning?
Shift changes was going to be the noise, the majority of the noise.
Okay, so just people coming in and out in cars.
Yes.
So there won't be any when it says on this
I don't want to say that there'll never be any noise. There may have to be something loaded that they forgot, so they might have to fire the crane up for 20 minutes. They might have to use a forklift for a few minutes to load a crane up. I'd be remiss to say that there'll never be any type of loading that goes on the trains during this time. But once these crews have to get out to the work site within the first hour in order to maintain a schedule. And to give you an idea of how detailed our schedules are on the work, it's scheduled to the minute, and we know where we are, so that we have to be efficient. And in that efficiency is getting here and getting out to the work site. So it's really the shift change at night. It's not construction. It's just a shift change.
Okay.
During the week is when we will be making the noise during the day. Not a lot of noise, but to change materials, put new cement on the rail cars, to pump the water into the tanks that are on the rail cars.
And that's the 7 to 4 period, 7 a.m. to 4.
Yes,
Okay.
that's the normal work hours.
If you had to you estimated that the vacuum for the cement was approximately 90 decibels. Based on that type of noise, approximately how much noise would be generated by loading the truck if there was an incidental noise on the weekends? Would it be half as much? Would it be a quarter of
Loading the cement will be...
No. So what I said was, you had estimated that the vacuum related to the cement was approximately 90 decibels. During the weekend, if you do have to load something onto the truck using the crane or using a forklift, in comparison to that, how much noise would be generated? How would you compare, like, the decibels?
Similar. And the reason I use 90 decibels, because that's a common maximum amount of decibels allowed to be used in construction.
Okay.
If I may, through the chair, just a comment is, we do have a noise ordinance in Brisbane, and this project would not be exempt from that ordinance. So just whatever noise is happening there, if we're finding out that they're exceeding the noise ordinance, that something that will have to be corrected in terms of their operations.
Thank you, Ken. That's actually pretty important. Did you have more?
Yeah. So then you then mentioned there was a third time period that you mentioned, and it started with something in December. Can you explain that to me?
Well, I was just giving you more sequence. In December is when the rail work starts. The first tunnel has to be ground and re-concreted prior to being able to start the rail work. So it's just a sequence of work.
Okay, so there's really only 2 time periods that
Yes.
should be concerned
Yes.
with, the Monday through Friday and the weekend.
Right, I was just giving you sequence of the project.
Got it. Okay, I have no further questions.
Commissioner Saison? Gomez?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to address the commission? Seeing none. Okay, motion to close the public hearing, please.
I move to close public hearing.
Second, please.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay. Discussion, commissioners. Who'd like to start?
So I have a question. I think that the time frame that was described is completely different than what's on page G.2.2. And so approving this as written, I find is problematic because I'm not really approving that. I would be approving what was stated in our hearing. So that's first thing. So I don't know how to deal with that. But okay, we can just, I think we're going to deal with that situation. And then the second thing I have to say in terms of comments is, and I understand that there are noise ordinances, and I also understand that being waken up at 5 o'clock in the morning consistently for 4 weeks or 12 weeks, that's an issue, and that's something that we have to address. So I get it, like, there are ordinances, but we're also here giving a use permit for something that is going to be caused because of an extraordinary circumstance, not ordinary noises. So I don't think it's inappropriate to ask noise questions or to just rely on the noise ordinances. I think that the clarifications helped. I think 7 to 4 is reasonable to make noise during 7 to 4. I think that if the shift changes, and I don't know because I forgot to ask this question, if the shift changes are what the weekend days, Saturday and Sunday, is in the last column. I mean, it's 7 to 8 a.m. I think our noise ordinance says 9 to 7 p.m. on the weekends. I mean, that's not such a big difference in terms of creating noise between 7 to 8 versus 9 to 7. But if it's at 5 o'clock in the morning, someone being waken up consistently, maybe 3 or 4 times even over 12 weeks at 5 o'clock in the morning on the weekend, I think that would be a problem. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Commissioner Gooding?
Yes, thank you. And I thank Commissioner Patel for his clarification with the applicant. I agree. I think when I first read the application, I was significantly concerned about the time/noise windows, particularly on weekends, as it affects residential folks. The noise ordinance is well and good, but experientially, I can tell you that the industrial parks are prone to stretching and bending that, and I would be concerned that a project of this size and impact would be an even bigger impact. So maybe, to Commissioner Patel's point, perhaps the application or the conditions on approval need to be tweaked. And I know John was starting to talk about what might be done in that regard. We should probably let them do that, but that's my concern.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Saison?
No, those are all good points. So let's say we approve this, and later on as the project goes and there's noise issues, a lot of the residents complain or whatnot. Is that something that can be revisited if we approve this? So, and that's something I would like staff to address.
Okay. If let's just go through everybody first. Commissioner Gomez?
Yeah, I mean, I see all the points around noise. My reading of this is that there's no pile driving or major saw cutting or concrete demolition activities. It's basically moving equipment and loading it. I mean, the key thing was kind of the assembly of tracks, which seems that doesn't seem like it's going to be hugely intrusive. But I think we've had a rigorous argument here. I think we just need to, if we do run into an issue, we have to be able to have a discussion and see if there's a solution. So that's all I really have at this point.
Okay, and thank you for what you mentioned. I'm just going to circle back with all of your comments. One thing important I think the applicant mentioned is that the loading of vehicles, which is going to be primary noise generation, is supposed to be done so that when that shift starts, they're going down the tracks. They're going to be far away from Brisbane, down at one of 4 tunnels. First, they'll be at the one that we know that's closest to us, but ultimately they may be traveling to other tunnels. So it would be really incumbent upon all of these operations to adhere to that schedule, that loading is done properly and uniformly as it's supposed to occur, and not off schedule. Nighttime activities, I would hope for the occasional occurrence to be an anomaly rather than a habit, as Commissioner Gooding mentions. Sometimes latitude of, this happens over and over. So that would be a concern. Other than that, track assembly, and if most of that work is really being done Monday through Friday, as you explained, the exposure to noise, even with a 24-hour cycle on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, should actually be minimal because you're working in another location. You're not doing all that rail fabrication, if I'm reading that correctly. So it sounds like the concerns are pretty uniform here, is what type of safeguards can we enact with this permit? John's ready to answer that, and also modification of this schedule to be reflected in the permit so it's accurate.
Yeah, in regard to that, we'll just modify the conditions of approval in terms of when this operation is actually occurring to reflect the discussion today, which would be then the weekdays 7 to 4, and then the weekends starting at Friday at whatever time and through Monday morning. So we'll make it very clear those are the hours of operation that you're limiting the use permit activities to. So we'll clarify that. That will supersede the narrative in the staff report. Again, that was the back and forth of getting information about how this project is a little, when you're doing a use permit for something that's operational like this, it's kind of hard to put all the facts together in a way that it's not a kind of conventional land use business plan like we had for the previous use permit, for example. So I apologize for any errors in that or miscommunication between the applicant and the city about the information. But the conditions of approval will supersede that. Then to the question of in terms of the recourse, all use permits, including interim use permits, are subject to revocation. The city can initiate a revocation of a use permit for a violation of the conditions of approval. I understand the idea that the noise issue and maybe the hesitancy to rely on the noise ordinance, but if we're going to revoke a permit based on noise impacts, again, the city has to have a grounds to do that, so we would expect a violation of the noise ordinance to be the basis to initiate a revocation. We can't just say it seems too noisy to people and we're going to revoke it. That we do have some due process issues with that. So that's what we would always be using as a basis if we got complaints. So again, for disclosure, that's what police, they'll be out there in off hours in particular, would be the ones to measure noise, and it's either in violation or not. Certainly the goal would be to get them into compliance and minimize noise, and there are techniques that can be used or operational changes to sort of minimize noise or eliminate those violations. That's what we would strive to do. But if that can't be achieved, the revocation is going to be the city's ultimate leverage on this. But the idea that we're going to be using objective standards to support a revocation procedure, and the noise ordinance provides those.
So may I ask a question just based on what you said? The difficulty is, say we have someone on the ridge and they have a problem one night, there's just horrible noise and it's gone on maybe 2 nights, and they call the police and the police go, oh, yes, exceeding the noise. But that's one call, and not everyone will call. So what I'm looking for is a way that we perhaps put a condition in that those calls from police will be immediately referred for review of this permit to enact tighter controls on the procedures. I'm looking for a way to tie it so that it doesn't go, okay, there was a call into the police, there was a noise complaint, but maybe this could go on for 3 weekends and nobody calls, but everybody's miserable. So I'm just looking for a way to make sure that this mechanism going from the police, because they may also say, well, there was only one complaint. No, it's not bothering anyone. Because people will get up, they'll complain, roll over in bed. They don't always pick up the phone.
And I think that's always going to be the difficult part, because
Right.
an annoyance, if somebody's sleep is being annoyed and
Right.
or interrupted and they're annoyed, but if they don't call the city, then again, there's no basis to track that. As a matter of practice, when we have a use permit like this, we work very closely with code enforcement. They're aware of these kind of permits and, the conditions that ride with these permits. Ken will be in contact with the code enforcement officer if this permit is approved, indicating, the commission's concern and the city's concern about this particular issue. And we'll be tracking it. And I guess if you have some input, we would normally not revocation would not be the first thing, right? So if there's one complaint, we try to work with the applicant, determine if it's sustained and it's something that can be rectified or not. So there is going to be that give and take is a very normal part of our business. So, again, I've been here, in the years I've been here, I've never seen a permit revoked that I can think of, because, you know, again, usually we work things out with the applicant. But certainly if you want to be kept informed, or, you know, in terms of sustained complaints, we can certainly work that into our kind of what we do. I'm just not sure even, you know, to go through whatever 3 complaints that we should, you know, commission wants to see this hearing, this use permit back for revocation or reconsideration. If you have some, I just have a, you know, difficulty coming up with sort of a standard for that. You know, 1 complaint, 3 complaints, 5 complaints. We would look at kind of the totality of what's going on. What was the severity? Are these issues that are going to be rectified? Was it a one-off, one bad night that generated 7 complaints and it's been rectified? You know, so those are kind of things that we usually use our judgment as to what the path forward is. So maybe kind of unsatisfactory to you unless you want to provide some, and we can report back to you, but the idea of kind of creating this bar, what you consider excessive complaints, I think is a complicated issue.
I think it's important to also acknowledge this is a complex project. It's a lot. We understand that. We know it has to be done. At the same time, what we're apparently, if I hope I'm echoing this correctly, we're hoping that the infractions of noise are anomalies and not a regular occurrence. Does that kind of speak to the sentiment?
Yeah.
And so the assurance that it's not a reoccurring problem is, I think, what our residents would be looking for. And the mechanism there, relying on our code enforcement to planning to say, okay, we've had so many issues, obviously one night, one caller, or 2 times, 3 times even. I mean, it's difficult to quantify what considers a problem here. I think that probably staff has a good grasp of that. And I don't know if as a condition we just perhaps request that the commission strongly advise that infractions regarding noise be I don't want to say anomaly again, but they not be too frequent, so as to trigger code enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, I would not even sort of suggest the idea that the applicant has any right to violate the noise ordinance at any time. So I think the underlying situation is that, you know, the expectation, we're not granting them any exceptions to the noise ordinance. So they're going to follow the noise ordinance. If they violate the noise ordinance, you know, there can be consequences, whether it's minor consequences, things they have to do to modify their operation to comply. That's a consequence. If there's, you know, repeated and continuing violations, then they're back to revocation, and the staff would initiate that based on these repeated violations. So, I mean, I think if there's something advisory, I mean, I would never encourage the commission to somebody give them a pass to an ordinance they would otherwise have to comply with, and that's the expectation.
Okay.
If they don't do that, you know, if you want to put an advisory, you know, when it comes to the revocation, that repeated, the commission would consider repeated violations of the noise ordinance as, you know, grounds for revocation, to put it out there. You know, that to me is, you know, putting them on notice in a way, if that's something you want to do. If you feel strongly that issue is
Commissioner
critical.
Gooding, you look like, sorry, John, you look like you're dying to say something. Please do.
Thank you. I think as a housekeeping matter, and I think John's already way ahead of me on this one as usual, but we need to tweak the conditions of approval to actually comply with the noise ordinance to begin with. There's some windows in there where they were conducting activities that are, 5 to 6 a.m. on weekends, for example. I think the applicant said that they didn't mean to say that's when activity is going to be, that there's some glitches. So housekeeping matter, when do you guys redo those conditions for us to move on?
I have an idea. There's nothing in here that mentions the noise ordinance. I'd like to then maybe say as a condition that we say it must be compliant with the Brisbane, it must adhere and be compliant with the Brisbane noise ordinance, or permit will be subject to review. How's that?
You can say that. I mean, the fact of the matter is that every use permit you see is subject to all applicable city ordinances and regulations. Just because you've approved a use permit doesn't give anybody a pass on, the other one you had earlier this evening. There are noise standards for Crocker Park. Everywhere has noise standards. So, I think I wouldn't necessarily single out that they have to comply with the noise ordinance. They have to comply with all city ordinances. I think if you want to indicate that for your purposes and revocation, that you'd consider as a body that violation of the noise ordinance would constitute grounds for revocation, you could put that in the record. I wouldn't.
We're fine with any emphasis like that.
Commissioner Gooding?
Thank you. For example, the application materials, I think on page 2, showed noise generating activities on weeknights at the end of shifts 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. That's probably not compliant with the noise ordinance.
But I think that, sorry.
Ken has some suggested language to address, I think, but.
Thank you. And just one more point. And as a point of information, for my education, what is the noise ordinance as to noise activities above whatever limits they are on weekend days?
So on weekend, I looked it up and it looks like it's between 9 and 7 that people are allowed to do construction activities on the weekend.
And so there are at least 2 places on this grid where, de facto they're in violation of the noise ordinance.
So my take on this conversation is that page 2, I think the second row just gets crossed off because it's not relevant to the timeframes that the applicant spoke about. Row number 1, 7 to 5. I mean, the applicant said 7 to 4, but 7 to 5, I don't think that really matters. I think we can keep that row. As it relates to the last 2 rows, that's really what we're talking about, is that time frame between 7 p.m. and 5 o'clock in the morning. And to be completely frank, I don't know if anyone's really going to call about noise between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock at night. And it seems as though that would be, according to row number 3, the operative time that there would be generating noise as it relates to the weekend. So I don't know if that's really that important. So then the last time frame that I see that's of issue is the 7 to 9 on the weekend. Right. So it's those 7 to 8, 8 to 9, those 2 hours where if there's 80 decibels or 90 decibels, that's over what the statute says, or at least our municipal code says is allowable. And my understanding is that that's going to be infrequent, and that's only going to, well, actually, I don't know. Right.
It is infrequent.
Yeah.
I do see.
Sir, you're not on the mic, so this is just a commissioner discussion. Thank you, though.
If I may, through the chair,
Yes.
so I'll run a possible condition by you and see what you think. Noise producing, loading, or assembly activities are limited to weekdays, 7 a.m., and I would put it to 7 p.m. to give some flexibility, and weekends, 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. And so those actual activities that are the noise producers would be already within the window of what the noise ordinance allows. So I'd hesitate to get into totally redoing this table. I think the operations are essentially to be coming and going at any time. And so this table was in conversation with the applicant to try to capture essentially what the noise producing times would be and what those shift times would be. But if we could do that with this condition and let the operation be essentially 24 hours a day, but the actual noise producing part would be controlled by the condition, if that seems reasonable to you all.
I would just point out to the applicant that 9 a.m. to 7 p.m., if a shift starts at 7, where you said there may be incidental problems, something needs to get loaded, puts it past 7 p.m. when that shift starts. So it would be important to note that's the ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
Discussion, commissioners, anything else? I think Ken's suggestion is a good, viable solution for now.
I agree.
Yes? Yes?
I agree.
Yes. Okay, so I would entertain a motion for approval with the conditional statement that Ken drafted regarding the, I don't know how to characterize it, loading, unloading noise relating to the Brisbane Code. You worded it very well, thank you.
Noise
This-
generating activity.
Noise generating activities, I like that, yes. And this is regarding use permit UP-4-18. Do we have a motion? Approval with condition.
I'll move to approve subject to the conditions added on to by staff in the last few minutes. Period.
Regarding noise generation.
Right.
Okay. And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you, sir. I will read the appeals process here. Anyone may appeal the action of the Planning Commission on a use permit application to the City Council not later than 6 calendar days following the Planning Commission's decision. And you can contact the city clerk for further information on that. Okay, moving along. Our agenda shows a workshop and noting the hour. I'd like some feedback from staff on whether we want to proceed on that.
I would absolutely defer to the commission if you want to call it a night, or you want to take a 10-minute break and dive into this for half an hour. Or I think Julia could probably run through, obviously without the interactive part, probably 15, 20 minutes in terms of the presentation part of it. But we totally defer. If the commission wants to carry this over, you can carry it over to another time.
Perhaps we can take a short break off the record and discuss which way to go. That'd be okay?
I mean,
whatever
I'd like to-
discussion.
it seems like you've done a lot of work here. I would love to have a fresher brain, to be honest, but I will defer to the majority.
My concern with going ahead on the presentation, if the presentation goes 20 minutes, and then if it goes 30 minutes, we're approaching this at another meeting without the benefit of the presentation. So I would suggest we continue to another meeting. That's just my personal belief, so that we have the whole thing as continuity,
Yeah.
fresh
I
in our
would-
minds.
Yeah, I would second, because usually we'll have questions and it'll go beyond the presentation.
It will. And it's a really good topic, and I think we're all going to have lots of questions, and we're going to learn a lot from this. So
It was
the integrity of it is really important.
the materials were really, really useful and good.
They
And
were.
I actually already went over them, and I would like the benefit of a fresh brain, and it turned to a pumpkin pretty soon.
Yeah, and I appreciate what staff put together on that. It's really well done. There's a lot of good information. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so then I guess Commissioner Patel, you didn't say anything. Are you in agreement?
Yeah, I'm good.
Or do we need to already go? Okay. All right.
Pot of coffee under there. Yeah.
Okay, we will then continue the workshop to another meeting of staff's choice, when possible. So we'll move on to items initiated by staff, please.
I only have one item, and that is, in looking at our calendar through November, our regularly scheduled meeting in November, second meeting would happen to fall on Thanksgiving, and I know you probably all are looking forward to spending Thanksgiving with staff and I, but on the off chance you don't want to do that, we're looking at potentially switching, having an alternative meeting date in November, maybe the 27th or 29th, I believe be the last week of November, Tuesday or Thursday evening. We do have some business items that we believe will require your attention for a second meeting in November. So if we can get some feedback from you, we don't need it right at the moment. We have time to schedule that, but you can certainly get a hold of staff, or if people know offhand right now, if either of those dates work or don't work, let us know. Otherwise, please get a hold of Julia and advise her accordingly.
And what is the second already scheduled meeting in November? What date is that?
November
22nd.
So that's Thanksgiving.
Yes.
No, but I mean, there's usually two.
That
What-
is,
the later one was what?
is Thanksgiving Day, the 22nd.
Oh.
So that's the
Okay,
issue.
That's the
one.
problem.
Okay, I got that.
That's the
backwards.
fourth Thursday of the month.
So,
Okay,
so
got
you're
it.
suggesting either the Tuesday the 27th or Thursday the 29th.
Correct.
Anybody have a preference?
Why don't we just keep it the Thursday?
Yeah.
Do the
Okay.
29th.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep
vote
it.
for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
29th.
Sounds good.
That's it.
If that works, we'll just kind of
Yeah.
modify our schedule accordingly. Thank you
Okay.
very much for that.
Okay. Thank you. Items initiated by the commission? Anyone? Nope. Okay. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next meeting, October 11, 7:30.